Hello and welcome to our viewers from around the world. This is Business Incorporated. I am Bolaji Akinwale. Now, coming up on the program, FMDQ OTC Market records largest deal, which is on foreign currencies in the month of January. Also on the program, Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum, Dr. Ibe Kachiko, speaks on the challenges facing the global oil markets. Plus, VOA Channel's television correspondent reports on the energy market outlook. Okay, we'll begin with the FMDQ OTC market story, which says the transactions on foreign currencies was the largest deal in the month of January for Nigeria's Financial Derivatives Securities Exchange. A report for last month released today shows forex deals worth $8.92 billion were done, amounting to 28.2% of the FMDQ total transactions of 7.4 trillion naira during the period under review. Treasury managers and dealers traded treasury bills amounting to 28.16% of the monthly total, while secured repurchase or buybacks accounted for 24.3%. Total transactions on FGN bonds was 15.79%, and unsecured placement among commercial banks in January accounted for a mere 3.26%. The system was heavy with liquidity last month as the central bank last year eases cash reserve ratios, releasing hundreds of billions of naira into bank coffers. And the head of UK's Independent Commission on Banking, Sir John Vickers, says the Bank of England plans are not strong enough to protect UK banks from the challenges ahead. According to Sir Vickers, the Bank of England proposal is less strong than what the ICB has recommended in terms of turning around the banking sector and the larger economy. Now, there has been no comments from the central bank itself on this issue. Specifically, there's a plan to make sure that banks have enough capital. That was what Sir John Vickers was being questioned about. Now, capital is considered vital to a bank's safety as it serves to protect it from sudden losses. It comes in many forms. The most common is funding from shareholders, now who expect, of course, a hefty return on the risk they are taking. The backdrop to this news is the current slump in bank share prices across Europe. And since the start of the year, European banking stocks have lost a quarter of their value. Still talking developments in European markets. We're looking at trading already underway in that region. Of course, that is looking at the numbers sharply higher following the Asian counterparts on Monday, despite weak trade data out of China. The positive open comes despite data out of China showing exports fell 11.2% in January from a year earlier, marking the 7th straight month of declines, while imports slumped 18.8%. Now let's find out what else is making the news in Europe as DWTV Channel's TV correspondent Avi Aguedas joins us live from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Avi, welcome to the program.
Hi, good to see you.
Now, the ICB chief, Mario Draghi, speaks at the EU Parliament today. What are your expectations of Draghi's policy statement down there in Frankfurt?
Well, here in Frankfurt, we don't really expect that much of a substantial change in what Mario Draghi has said in the past. Of course, we know that he is a man with a lot of influence in his words. Whatever he says is possibly going to show some kind of a reaction here. But that being said, let's not forget that the position of the European Central Bank right now is quite tricky. On the one hand, the stimulus measures that the bank has put in place have not really yielded the results they should have, especially in the inflation rate in the Eurozone, which is still very far away from the 2% target that Mario Draghi and the European Central Bank had set. On the other hand, the situation here is delicate, so that basically might make further stimulus measures necessary. So it is a very difficult situation. That is why the most important thing that we expect from this conference or from this statement of Mario Draghi is how he assesses the current situation of the economy in the Eurozone. If we hear words of optimism, that makes the chances of further stimulus measures less realistic. If we hear that he considers it to be very delicate, then it is most likely that we will see further measures by the European Central Bank, which of course investors anticipate and definitely like, as we know.
Now, what are some of the biggest news driving the European markets into deep green territory this Monday?
Well, what we are seeing is a very strong recovery. As we speak, the DAX, the main German index, is gaining more than 3%, which is a very solid increase right now. The most important stories are actually coming from Asia this morning, as we already mentioned that the Japanese markets recovered sharply, and that despite the bad figures coming from China, investors expect the central bank in China to also implement new stimulus measures. So what we are seeing is a lot of expectation of actions by the different central banks, including the one in Japan and in China, and also here in Europe, and perhaps even the United States. So that is what investors are eyeing. Perhaps the interesting thing here is that the biggest winners of today's trading session are the same companies that were the biggest losers in the past days. So we are talking there about the most important banks, which are Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank, Germany's second largest bank, and the energy companies as are RWE or E.ON, which are two very important brands here in Germany. Those two are the ones having the most important gains.
Now, Iran's first shipment of crude to Europe set sail today. Is Iran re-entry into the oil game a news to watch for traders and investors over there?
Well, it is definitely very important news because we know that the oil price has caused most of the tumbling in the markets in the recent weeks. However, it is also important to mention that investors have widely expected this to happen. They knew that it was coming, so it definitely does not come as a surprise. But we still don't have a stable development in the oil price, and that is something that we will definitely have to watch for. There have been a lot of jitters in the past because of the low oil prices, which, as we know, affect most of the exporting countries, and that is possibly set to continue. We don't know how it is going to develop, and of course Iran being the new actor in the market is an important news to watch, and we will see how that re-entering in the different markets develops in the coming future.
Thank you for your insights, Javier, and enjoy the rest of your day. Now, after the break, Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum reveals plans to address the global oil market glut. Please stay with us.